Son of Angels, Spirit Fighter by Gerald Law. Part 1. Beginnings. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also later. These women gave birth to children who became famous and were the mighty warriors of long ago. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Chapter 1. The Tryout. Jonah's alarm blared in his left ear, but his eyes stayed shut and he didn't flinch. His left leg hanging over the edge of the top level of his bunk bed, a puddle of drool coming out of his mouth and onto his Star Wars pillowcase. Just a few more minutes of sleep. That was all he needed. Thump, thump, thump. Ugh. Jonah moaned. Thump, thump, thump. Jonah felt the board under his mattress move. He pulled the covers over his head and tried to ignore the frantic buzzing, knowing that what his clock said without even having to look. 6:03 a.m., his least favorite time of the day. He'd slept horribly the last 3 nights, waking up each morning with the same fuzzy memory of a dream. Something about evil faces, howling wind, and angels. The bunk beds began to creak and shake, and he knew that Jeremiah was not going to leave him alone. Even though Jeremiah was only 7 years old, Jonah was 13. He was already catching up to his older brother in size. The bed bounced again, and from underneath the sheet, Jonah felt the warm breath of a face about 2 inches away from his. "Jonah!" Jeremiah said in a loud, raspy voice, his version of a whisper. Jonah didn't move. Jeremiah grabbed his older brother by the shoulders and shook. "Jonah! Get up! It's time for school!" Jonah yanked the sheet down off his face. "Jeremiah," he said, tired and cranky, but his brother was just sitting there, grinning at him in his Scooby-Doo pajamas, breathing in his face. The bedroom door opened. "Boys," came a girl's voice, "it's time to get up. We're going to be late for school if you don't start moving, you know." Their 11-year-old sister, Eliza, stood across the hallway, teasing her hair into place in front of a mirror on the wall. She was lanky like their mother, and she frowned behind her wire-rimmed glasses at a wild curl that wouldn't stay in place. Jonah launched his pillow at her, which she saw coming out of the corner of her eye, and avoided just in time. It smacked harmlessly against the wall. Jeremiah fell back in the bed, laughing. Jonah drew his head back under the sheet for 1 more minute, and let his mind wander. Lately, Jonah's life had not gone as planned. Even though he was in 7th grade, he was still in the same school with Eliza and Jeremiah. Granger Community School had recently expanded to include students all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. So he was stuck walking the halls, knowing total embarrassment could be waiting around any given corner. 2 weeks ago, Jonah was in the lunchroom when Jeremiah walked in and spotted him. He saw the wild look in his brother's eyes, which made him drop his cafeteria taco on his tray, splattering it all over his shirt, and murmur to himself in a quiet humiliation, "Oh no." He knew what was coming. He just couldn't stop it. "Jonah!" His brother launched himself into a full-fledged sprint to come give him a bear hug. 2 tables, 8 lunch trays, and a very frightened Mrs. Clagmire were no match for his excitement. They all went flying onto the floor. And then just the other day, the principal made this announcement over the school intercom. "Congratulations to our very own 5th grader, Eliza Stone, for her recent accomplishments. She won 1st place in the science fair, the blue ribbon at the Mathletes regional competition for the academically advanced, and the gold medal for the local chapter of WizKid Computer Programmers International, all in the same week. Brilliant, Eliza. We at Granger Community School are privileged to have such a gifted student in our midst. Bravo." Since then, Zach Smellman and his bully buddies had taken every chance they could to remind him that his little sister was smarter than he was. Which was funny, coming from a group of guys still taking the 3rd grade math. Jonah sighed loudly, and finally forced himself to climb down from the top bunk. He pulled his clothes on quickly in the dark. Still half asleep, he staggered down the stairs, landing on a chair at the weathered wooden table beside Jeremiah, who was halfway through his bowl of frosted flakes. Eliza was already finished with breakfast and waiting by the door impatiently, her book bag strapped tightly to her back. Mom, why do Jeremiah and I have to share a room? Jonah's mom smiled at him sleepily, pushing the wispy blonde hair from her face and planting a kiss on his forehead. Even in her rumpled bathrobe, Eleanor Stone was stunning. Tall with wide shoulders, hair pulled back in a ponytail, she commanded attention wherever she was. Haven't we been through this before, dear? She said, running her fingers through his thick, black hair. We only have 3 bedrooms, and Eliza's a girl. She needs a room to herself. Jonah sighed. He imagined what it would be like to have a room to himself, where none of his stuff got bothered and broken, where he could lock the door and play video games or read a comic book without being pestered. What would you like for breakfast, hon? Cereal is fine, he said, snapping out of his fantasy. He shook the flakes into a chipped green bowl while she poured milk from a plastic jug. Where's Dad? He had a late meeting at the church last night, so he's sleeping in this morning. Jonah nodded, crunching on his cereal slowly. His dad was the pastor of All Souls United Methodist Church in Peaceville, and late-night meetings were a regular thing. Don't forget your basketball shoes and shorts, dear, she said, using one hand to try and tame his mane of hair. Tryouts are today, remember? It was often easy for Jonah to forget things, like homework. He had forgotten to do 2 English assignments last week,